All right, thank you guys. And following Thursday's sports wagering action, we're 5-0 in our last 5 extra daily picks on BrockPage.com. $1,000 bettors are now up over $4,500 during that stretch. Now, if you want to join those guys and access today's extra daily pick, it's only going to cost you just $2.99, and the link for that package is in the description section below. We're also 2-0 in our last couple of board member tier package picks on that very same website. And just remember, guys, board members get access to every single bet that I give out on that webpage all the way through the end of February. And the link for both of those packages is in the description section below. And with that, guys, let's go ahead and dive into it. I'm calling this video part 1. We have a ton of games tomorrow. Want to get these early games out quick. So welcome to part 1. And we're going to start off with UCONN taking on Villanova. And that's going to be a 12 o'clock Eastern tip-off on Saturday, February 5th, 2022. Villanova's -6 at the Wells Fargo Center, totals 132.5. And even though the Wells Fargo Center's just a handful of miles down the main line, it's really a stone's throw. I do think it's a bit of a disadvantage for the Wildcats to be playing there. These guys are actually great in the pavilion, and they play fantastic defense there. So to be taking one of those home games and kind of changing locations and moving it down the street, I don't know, it could potentially be, problematic. Now, the Wildcats have struggled covering the point spread here recently. They failed to cover the number in 4 out of their last 5 ball games, and they may have to go to work here Saturday without their second leading scorer, Justin Moore, as he's currently battling an ankle injury. Now, Villanova is taking on a UConn team who won 5 out of their last 6 ball games themselves, and they also went 7-3 against the number in their last 10. Now, the Huskies are scoring over 78 points a game, and they're actually amongst the best offensive rebounding teams in the nation. When it comes to the scoring in this one, R.J. Cole is averaging 16 points a game, along with 4 boards and 4.5 assists. Meanwhile, Tyrese Martin, he's making over 42% of his three-pointers. He's also scoring 13 points a game as well. The Huskies are one of the best free throw shooting teams in the country as well. They're actually in the top 5 in the nation in road offensive free throw percentage. Now, total-wise, UConn went 70% to the over in their last 10 ball games. Meanwhile, Villanova saw overs recently with Marquette, Georgetown, and Butler. All conference teams, all common opponents. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward UConn +6 in the over 132.5. Next matchup, it is going to be Illinois versus Indiana. That's going to be a 12 o'clock Eastern start time. The Indiana Hoosiers are -1 at home with the total at 137.5. But as good as the Hoosiers have been at home here this season, they've actually struggled from the foul line at Assembly Hall. As a matter of fact, Indiana's shooting just 68% from the stripe in front of their home fans. They're taking on an Illinois team who won their last 3 straight, and they also got the W in 14 out of their last 17. Now, the Illini, they've been very good offensively on the road. They're making nearly 40% of their three-pointers when they travel, and they're also in the top 5 in the nation in road offensive boards. And speaking of rebounds, well, Big Kofi Coburn, he's averaging nearly a dozen boards a game, along with 22 points per contest. Meanwhile, Alfonso Plummer, he's drilling 40% of his three-pointers himself. He's also scoring 15 points a game. Now, when it comes to the defensive play in this one, well, Illinois is also amongst the best teams in the nation in defensive rebounding on the road. When it comes to the total in this one, Illinois saw 4 out of their last 7 get over the line. The Illini also went 70% to the over in their last 10 meetings with Indiana. So if you're into historical trends, certainly want to think about that one there. Meanwhile, the Hoosiers saw 6 out of their last 10 get over the posted number themselves. I'm going to lean toward Illinois +1 in the over 137.5. Next matchup, it is going to be Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State. That's going to be a 12 o'clock Eastern tip-off. The Oklahoma State Cowboys are -1.5 at home, totals 133. And despite losing a whole bunch of games here recently, the Cowboys are playing some really tough defense on their home court. Oklahoma State's giving up only 65 points a game at the Gallagher-Iba Arena, and they're also limiting their competition to just 39% shooting from the field there. Now, scoring-wise, Avery Arn Anderson, he's scoring 11 points a game along with 2 boards and a couple assists. Meanwhile, Bryce Thompson, he's scoring 10.5 points a game himself, along with a couple of rebounds. Really good production out of both of those guys this year. Now, they're taking on a Sooner club who lost 6 out of their last 7 themselves, and they're shooting only 30% from three land on the road. Now, the Sooners are also amongst the worst in the Big 12 in road offensive rebounding. And when it comes to the injury report, Johnson and Mason are questionable for the Sooners. Williams is questionable for the Cowboys. And when it comes to the scoring in this one, Oklahoma State 64% to the under on their home court. Meanwhile, the Sooners, on the other side of things, they saw 4 out of their last 7 fall under the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward Oklahoma State -1.5. And the under 133. Next contest, it is going to be St. John's versus Butler. That's going to be a 12 o'clock Eastern tip-off. St. John's is -2, totals 140.5. Now the Red Storms in the top 25 in the nation in scoring on average per contest. They're actually averaging 80 points a game. And they're led by Julian Champagnie, who's scoring over 18.5 points a night, along with 6 rebounds and a couple assists. Meanwhile, Posh Alexander, he's dropping 15 points a game himself, along with 4 boards and 5 assists as well. Now, the Red Storm got the W recently against Georgetown, Seton Hall, and DePaul. Important wins there. Always important to get those W's over conference opponents. Now, they're taking on a Butler team who lost 7 out of their last 10 themselves, and they've really struggled offensively this year. The Bulldogs are scoring only 62 points a game at home. And they covered the point spread in only 27% of those contests. Now, total-wise, Butler's 8-3 to the under at the Hinkle Fieldhouse. Meanwhile, St. John saw 5 out of their last 7 fall under the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward the St. John's Red Storm -2 and the under 140.5. All right, next contest I have for you, it is going to be Wake Forest versus Florida State. That's going to be a 12 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Wake Forest is -1 with the total at 146.5. Now, Wake Forest got the W in 7 out of their last 9. And they're amongst the best road shooting teams in the country. Now, the Deacs are currently in the top 3 in road offensive field goal percentage. And they're actually making 51% of their shots in that very same category. Alondas Williams, he's scoring nearly 20 points a game, along with 6 boards and 5 assists. Meanwhile, Davian Williamson, he's drilling 42% of his 3 balls. He's also averaging 13 points a game. Now, the Deacs are currently in the top 25 in the nation in scoring on average per game. These guys have been really good with the ball in their hands. They're taking on a Florida State team who allows 70 points a game on their home court. And they're actually letting their opponents connect on nearly 41% of their three-pointers against them in their home building. So this is a Florida State team who hasn't played great defense in front of their home fans. Now, when it comes to covering the point spread, well, the Noles are getting the job done against the number in only 40% of their home games this year. When it comes to the total in this one, the Noles are currently 7-3 to the over in their last 10 at the Tucker Center. Meanwhile, Wake Forest is 4-2 to the over in their last 6 on the road. I'm going to lean toward Wake Forest -1. And the over 146.5. Next ball game I have for you, a little SEC action. I'm talking about Auburn versus Georgia, 1 p.m. Eastern tip-off. The Auburn Tigers are -18.5, totals 153. Now Auburn's 21-1 overall for the season, and they successfully cover the point spread 17 times already. These guys have cashed a lot of tickets for a lot of folks. Now the Tigers are scoring 81 points a game, and they're led by Jabari Smith, who's making over 40% of his three-pointers. He's also averaging 15 points a game. Meanwhile, KD Johnson, he's scoring 13 points a game himself, along with 2 rebounds and a couple of steals. And speaking of defensive play, the Tigers are limiting their competition to just 38% shooting from the field. They're actually in the top 20 in the country in defensive field goal percentage. So these guys getting the job done on both ends of the court. They're taking on a Georgia team, a struggling Georgia team, who lost 10 out of their last 11, and they're giving up nearly 78 points a game. Now, total-wise, the Bulldogs went 6-3 to the over in their last 9 outings. Meanwhile, Auburn saw 7 out of their last 9 get over the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward Auburn minus 18.5 in the over 153. All right, next contest, it is going to be Northwestern versus Nebraska, 1 p.m. Eastern start time. Northwestern is minus 5 on the road, totals 150.5. But despite being favored on the road here, Northwestern actually lost 8 out of their last 10, and they successfully covered the point spread in only 30% of those contests. Now, the Wildcats are also giving up a ton of points on the road here this year. They're giving up 75 points a game when they travel, and they're letting their opponents connect on nearly 44% of their three-pointers against them in that very same category. Now, they're taking on a Nebraska team who successfully covered the point spread in their last 4 straight themselves. And in addition to that, they also went 8-2 against the spread in their last 10. Now, the Cornhuskers, they're scoring nearly 74 points a game at home this year. And they're actually led by Bryce McGowens, who's scoring 17 points a game, along with 5.5 boards. Meanwhile, Alonzo Verge, he's averaging over 13.5 points a game himself, along with 4 boards and 5 assists. Now, the Huskers are covering in 60% of their home games this year. And when it comes to the total in this one, Nebraska's 70% to the over in their last 10 outings. Meanwhile, Northwestern, they saw 7 out of their last 10 get over the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward the underdog Nebraska Cornhuskers +5 in the over 150.5. Next contest, a little more SEC action. I'm talking about Tennessee versus South Carolina. That's going to be a 1 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Tennessee's -8 on the road, totals 135. Now, the Tennessee Volunteers, they got the W in 4 out of their last 5. And they've actually done a pretty nice job covering the number here lately. Having said that, though, these guys actually do not play their best basketball on the road. As a matter of fact, the Vols lost 4 out of their last 6 when traveling, and they shot just 30% from three-land in those ball games. Meanwhile, defensively, on the other end of the court, the Vols have actually had some issues, on that end of the court as well. They're actually giving up 71 points a game away from home. They're having a tough time guarding the 3-ball in that very same category. Now, they're taking on a South Carolina team who won 3 out of their last 4 themselves. And in addition to that, they play some very good basketball at home. The Gamecocks are currently 9-2 straight up in front of their home fans. And they're also covering in 64% of those home contests. Now, when it comes to offensive production in this one individually, Eric Stevenson, he's scoring over 11 points a game, along with 4 boards and 2.5 assists. Meanwhile, James Reese V, he's averaging double-digit points a game himself, along with 2 boards and 2 assists as well. Now, the Gamecocks have also played, some of the toughest defense at home in the SEC. They're actually limiting their opponents to just 65 points a game at the Colonial Life Arena. And in addition to that, they're actually limiting their opponents to just 39% shooting from the field there. So a lot of good stuff defensively for South Carolina. This could potentially be an interesting game. But anyway, total-wise, South Carolina did see 3 out of their last 4 ball games get over the posted number, 60% to the over in their last 10. Meanwhile, Tennessee saw overs recently with the likes of Texas A&M, Florida, and Kentucky. All conference opponents, all common opponents as well. I'm going to lean toward the underdog South Carolina Gamecocks +8 in the over 135. All right, next contest, little A10 action. Can't forget about our mid-majors here. This should be a good game. I'm talking about Dayton versus St. Louis, 2 p.m. Eastern tip-off. The St. Louis Billikens are -3.5, totals 135. Now, the Billikens are on a 4-game winning streak, and they also got the W in 10 of 13 contests in front of their home fans. The Billikens are limiting their competition to just 63 points a game at the Chaifetz Arena. And they're also holding them to just 38% shooting from the field in their own building. Now, scoring-wise, Gibson Jimerson, he's scoring over 17.5 points a game, along with 2 boards and 42% shooting from beyond the arc. Great player, great name. Gotta love it. Gibson Jimerson. Great name. Anyway, teammate Yuri Collins, he's scoring 11 points a game himself, along with 4 boards and 8 assists. Now, St. Louis scores over 80 points a game, and they're making nearly 48% of their field goals at home. They're taking on a Dayton team who failed to cover in 3 out of their last 4, and they're actually playing just .500 basketball on the road this season. Now, the Flyers have had their issues offensively. They're actually scoring only 68 points a game, and they're making only 65% of their free throws away from home. Now, total-wise, Dayton's 4-2 to the over in their last 6 road games. Meanwhile, St. Louis saw overs recently with George Mason, George Washington, and Richmond. I'm going to lean towards St. Louis -3.5 in the over 135. Next contest, ACC. I'm talking about Clemson versus Georgia Tech, 2 p.m. Eastern tip-off. Clemson's -4, totals 138.5. Now, Clemson covered the number in their last 3 straight, and they're amongst the top 15 in the nation in shooting the 3-ball. Now, offensively, P.J. Hall, he's averaging over 14.5 points a game, along with 6 rebounds. Meanwhile, Alamir Dawes is making nearly 40% of his 3-pointers. He's also scoring 11 points a night. Now, when it comes to defensive play, the Tigers are limiting their competition to just 67 points a game. They're taking on a Georgia Tech team who lost 7 out of their last 10 themselves, and they actually covered the number on only 4 out of 14 home games. Now, the Yellow Jackets are averaging only 69 points per contest, and they're playing just .500 basketball in front of their home fans. Now, total-wise, Georgia Tech saw unders recently with Miami, Florida State, and Duke. All conference opponents, all ACC opponents there. Meanwhile, Clemson's 60% to the under in their last 10 themselves. I'm going to lean toward Clemson -4 and the under 138.5. Next ball game, little Big East action, talking about DePaul versus Xavier. And that's going to be a 2 o'clock Eastern start time. The Xavier Musketeers are -10.5 with the total at 144. Now, the Musketeers are 11-2 straight up at home this year, and they're playing some really good defense in front of their home crowd. Xavier is allowing only 62 points a game at the Cintas Center, and they're limiting their competition to just 38% shooting from the field in that same category. Now, scoring-wise, Jack Nunge, he's averaging 12 points a game along with 7 rebounds. Meanwhile, Nate Johnson, he's averaging double-digit points a game himself. He's also making over 40% of his 3-pointers. Now, when it comes to offensive production, Xavier's averaging 76 points a game on their home court. They're taking on a DePaul team who's on a 4-game losing streak themselves, and they also took the loss in 9 out of their last 10. Now, the Blue Demons may also be missing Freeman Liberty here tomorrow. He's battling a groin injury, but regardless of his status, DePaul has struggled on the road this season. They actually lost 5 out of their last 7 away from home, and they covered the number only twice during that stretch. Now, the Blue Demons averaged only 63 points a game in those road contests, and they shot only 29% from downtown in that same category. Now, total-wise, DePaul saw their last 4 straight fall under the posted number. They're also 5-2 to the under when they travel. Meanwhile, Xavier went 70% to the under in their last 10 themselves. And when it comes to head-to-head meetings here, well, these teams saw 8 out of their last 10 contests with each other fall under the line. I'm going to lean towards Xavier -10.5 and the under 144. Next ball game, it is going to be Iowa State versus Texas. That's going to be a 2 o'clock Eastern tip-off. The Texas Longhorns are -6.5 with the total at 118. Now, the Longhorns are 13-1 straight up at home this season, and they're leading the entire country in fewest home points allowed per contest. Texas is allowing only 49 points a game at the Irwin Center. No, that's not a misprint. I did not misspeak. They're allowing 49 points a game at the Irwin Center. That is it. Very tough to score against them. They're also in the top 25 in defensive boards. Now, scoring-wise, Timmy Allen, he's averaging 11.5 points a game, along with 6 boards and a couple assists. Meanwhile, Marcus Carr, he's averaging 11 points a game himself, along with a couple of rebounds and 3 assists as well. They're taking on an Iowa State program who lost 5 out of their last 8, and they also have a losing record on the road. Matter of fact, the Cyclones are scoring only 69 points per contest this year, and they're shooting just 32% from three-land. Not scoring a lot of points, really not a big threat shooting the long ball. When it comes to the total on this one, Iowa State did see overs recently against Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, and this very Texas Longhorns team. And speaking of the Longhorns, they went 60% to the over in their last 10 ball games themselves. Now, they're also 7-3 to the over in their last 10 meetings with Iowa State. So if you're into historical trends, plenty of overs to go around. Know this is a low number, kind of a square play, but I think it'll go over. I'm going to lean toward Texas minus 6.5 and the over 118. Next matchup, it is going to be Louisville versus Syracuse, 2 p.m. Eastern tip-off. The Syracuse Orange is minus 6.5, totals 148. Now, the Orange won their last 2 straight, and they're also 8-3 straight up in the Carrier Dome. Buddy Boeheim is averaging nearly 20 points a game, along with 3 boards and 3 assists. Meanwhile, Jimmy Boeheim, he's scoring 13.5 points a game himself, along with 6 rebounds. Now, the Orange scores 82 points a game in Syracuse on their home court, and they're actually making 41% of their three-pointers in their own building. They're taking on a Louisville team who's on a 4-game losing streak themselves, and they also dropped 7 out of their last 8 ball games. Now, even worse, the Cardinals have covered the point spread in only 1 out of their last 12 contests. And when it comes to the injury report, Williams is out, Wheeler is questionable. And when it comes to scoring on the road in this one, the Cardinals are averaging only 65 points a game in that particular category, and they're making only 40% of their field goals when they travel. Now, total-wise, Louisville saw overs recently with North Carolina, Notre Dame, and Florida State. They also went 7-3 the over in their last 10 meetings with the Orange. Meanwhile, Syracuse is 64% to the over in the Carrier Dome this season themselves. I'm going to lean towards Syracuse minus 6.5 and the over 148. Next contest, it is going to be Texas Tech versus West Virginia. That's going to be a 2 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Texas Tech is minus 5 with the total at 130.5. And as good as the Red Raiders have been, I tell you what, it's mighty tough playing in Morgantown. Now first, the Raiders lost 4 out of their last 5 road games, and they averaged only 62 points a game during that span. And even worse than that, Texas Tech is shooting just 25% from beyond the arc when they travel. Now when it comes to the injury report in this one, Agbo, Calhoun, and Allen, they're all listed as questionable to play Saturday. Now they're taking on a West Virginia program who's 10-2 straight up on their home court. And they're limiting their opponents to just 62 points a game there. Now scoring-wise, the Mountaineers are led by Taz Sherman, who's scoring over 18.5 points a game, along with 2 boards and 2 assists. Meanwhile, Sean McNeil, he's averaging 13 points a game himself, along with a couple of rebounds and nearly 40% shooting from three-land. Now, total-wise, West Virginia is 7-5 to the under in Morgantown. Meanwhile, Texas Tech, they saw unders recently with Mississippi State, Kansas State, and Baylor. I'm going to lean toward West Virginia plus 5. And the under 130.5. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our next and final matchup for part 1. I'm talking about Michigan versus Purdue, 2:30 p.m. East. Purdue's minus 10.5, totals 150. Now, the Boilermakers are on a 4-game winning streak, and they're also 11-1 straight up in the Mackey Arena. Purdue scoring 88 points a game in front of their home fans, and they're also drilling nearly 43% of their three-pointers in that same category. Matter of fact, Purdue currently finds themselves in the top 3 in the nation in offensive three-point percentage. Jaden Ivey's making 44% of his 3 balls this year. He's also averaging 17 points a game. Meanwhile, Zach Edey, he's scoring 15 points a game along with 7.5 rebounds. Now, shooting-wise, the Boilermakers are in the top 3 in the country in offensive field goal percentage. Meanwhile, defensively, They're leading the nation in defensive boards per contest. Now they're taking on a Michigan team who lost 5 out of their last 8 away from home. And they're giving up 72 points a game in their travels. Now the Michigan Wolverines, they've also failed to cover the point spread in their last 3 straight games. And they went just 30% against the number in their last 10. Now, total-wise, Michigan saw their last 5 straight get over the line. They also went 80% to the over in their last 10. Meanwhile, Purdue went 3-0 to the over in their last 3 themselves, 8-2 to the over in their last 10. I'm going to lean toward Purdue minus 10.5 and the over 150. And with that, guys, we're going to go ahead and jump into our quick pick recap, powered to you by my website at brockpage.com, where I'm currently 5-0 in my last 5 extra daily picks following Thursday's sports wagering action. I'm going to lean toward UCONN plus 6 over 132.5. Give me Illinois plus 1 over 137 and a hook. I'm leaning toward Oklahoma State minus 1.5 under 133. St. John's minus 2 under 140 and a hook. I like Wake Forest minus 1 over 146.5. Give me Auburn minus 18.5 over 153. I also like Nebraska plus 5 over 150 and a hook. Give me South Carolina plus 8 over 135. I'm also leaning toward St. Louis minus 3.5 over 135. Clemson Tigers minus 4 under 138 and a hook. Give me Xavier minus 10.5 under 144. I also like the Texas Longhorns minus 6.5 and the over 118. Give me the Syracuse Orange minus 6.5 over 148. West Virginia plus 5 under 130.5. With my next and final free pick for the video, I'm going to lean toward Purdue minus 10.5 in the over 150. And with that, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on brockpage.com. If you guys do end up getting a membership here today on my website, just keep in mind, you're going to get billed the day you sign up and then the first of every month following that. I always tell folks in every single video, the earlier in the month you sign up, the better. And if you guys want to get access to every single pick that I give out on that website, you're going to want to sign up for my board member tier package. Not only are you going to get access to my board member tier pick itself, you're actually going to get access to every single bet that I give out on that website. It's an all-inclusive pass. All right, guys, most importantly, got to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. I really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. And with that said, guys, happy Friday or Saturday to you, depending on when you're watching this. Best of luck to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at brockpage.com.